Hi, everybody.
Hello. Hello.
Why don't you go ahead, take a couple minutes, or however long as you want. Go ahead and introduce yourself, however you choose to.
Yeah. Let me think. I'm Adi. I've been playing Rivals for almost 4.5 years now, I would say. I started around November 2016, and I've been playing the game for a while. Gotten to really see a lot of different things going on as I've been playing since then and improving a lot. I'm a decent Zetterburn main. I've done pretty well at certain tournaments randomly in the past that came out of nowhere. And I would say I have all right information about the game. So when I say something stupid, don't be surprised, slash, do expect that, as I don't, as much as I would like to think I know more, I don't know as much as I would think. But I do think a fair amount about the game, especially kind of trying to dissect certain things as I'm going forward. And so yeah, it's pretty fun to kind of be on a podcast to talk about these things more in depth, really talking about things that I and others have experienced within the game and being able to kind of discuss it more out there and kind of just have something that people can look back to. Um, and yeah, I would say that's pretty much it in terms of rivals and so on.
All right. Well, thanks for that introduction, Adi. So, as you guys have seen on Twitter, I have titled this episode as "Movement is King," and we're going to be talking about movement. And I really want you guys, as you're listening to the episode, to think to yourself, what does movement in Rivals mean to you? Like as a overall encompassing philosophy, when I say what does movement mean to me, I think of it like movement is the king piece in chess, whereas movement alone likely won't win you any games, or at least very many. But without it, arguably, in my opinion, the most important aspect to one's gameplay and chance of winning. And just like the king piece in chess, you're not going to win very many games with it alone, but without it, you've already lost.
I think
So,
coming
um,
from my experience as I play Edalus, and I have to admit that when I picked up the character, I didn't expect the learning curve to be as different as I envisioned other characters to be. I feel like what Edalus does when you think of Edalus moving, he's got the essential part, the dash attack, which not a lot of characters have access to that really fast burst option. And although I will punch myself for using it too much because it's very negatively disjointed, but it is unarguably one of the best burst options in the game. It leads to Dacus, it leads to combos, and it's just like all encompassing for what you think about movement with Atlas. And I think that it has kind of hampered me learning other characters, just because it's so unique of a movement within Rivals. Because everyone can plat drop, everyone can wave dash, right? He's got the jump cancel part, which is really important, and along with his really cool movement vertically, he's got his really obvious accelerated horizontal movement as well. And when I think of movement, I think of Edalus.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to see how movement is kind of one of as Scurvy was saying, it's like the king piece in chess. It's pivotal to playing rivals and being able to do well. And I think it's one of the most basic tech skills that is pretty much universally applicable. It's something that you have to um you have to practice pretty often, and it's something that you need to be able to work on over and over. And it's something that even like top players work on to this day, trying to improve on their movement and being able to use it well. And so it really is kind of the bedrock of being able to play almost any character. And you need to have that solid foundation. And it's really nice that from the beginning, the moment you pick up the game, you can practice movement and you can only improve from there. It's not something that you really need to wait or try to learn later on. It's really, you should start learning it from the get-go, and you only keep going and moving forward from there. So it's very like primary to how you want to approach the game and how you want to really improve as well.
Yeah. On that note, it feels like movement is something you always are practicing. Like we see this term of like purposeful movement or learning how to apply pressure with movement. So, and that changes as you get better at the game, fight different people because they ask different things of your movement. So I guess how we can move into the next one is talking about more of that purposeful movement and pressure. I wanted to ask you, Audie, about that, what that's like and what you try and look for in movement, exploiting other people's movement, or how to fix your own, like mid combat, something like that.
Yeah. Um, I think, and you're asking kind of just about like more purposeful or intentional movement, right?
Yeah, it's this term purposeful movement that gets thrown around a
Right.
lot. So as you get higher
Yes.
in level, it's like, yeah, what does that like actually mean for someone?
Right. I
Yeah,
think it's really important when people think about movement, it's a very basic tech skill, but I think they can kind of people can approach it as if it's just a simple tech skill really that you have to learn and maybe practice in practice mode and kind of just like be able to do these certain things, but people don't think about it in a more broader sense of you need to know why you're doing what you're doing. Like you said, like purposeful movement is valuable and it's critical to actually using it well. And so something that I've noticed a lot with players is even when I was improving, I knew how to wave dash when I'd started the game. I could perform the inputs, but it took me like maybe it took me a month of just playing the game and messing around until I started actually implementing wave dashes into my actual game because I knew the tech and I could do it, but I didn't try to practice it as much in game and try to improve how well I used wave dashes and just like better movement, things like platform movement and so on. Things like that I don't think I used a lot initially. And so I think there's a really important thing of being able to practice movement in game and not just doing movement drills maybe before you play, but actually being more intentional with when you use it. And that I think is important for how you practice it to really get it drilled into your muscle memory that what you're doing is not just kind of moving around fancily, but you want to be able to know why you're doing it. And in terms of what your purposes should be, the biggest thing is that your movement allows you to avoid certain hits or approach from a different angle. A really basic interaction could be if you're on Merchant Port on the platform on the extreme left, and there's a character, maybe a Sylvanos, below it who is throwing out jabs. With good movement, you can jump up to the platform, wave dash onto it, or wave land onto it, drop down and hit the Sylvanos, and they're not able to deal with you unless they throw an up tilt. But if they're trying to cover in front of you, you've dealt with this. You realize that you've run away from the space where they're attacking, and you've come in from a different angle. And it really helps when you're able to use good movement to actually set that up well. And it's vital that you know why you're doing it, that you're not just running around on a platform because it's fun or it feels like you're pushing a lot of buttons, but you want it to be that when you do use movement, it's because you want to either approach from a certain vantage point or you want to actually or you want to place yourself in a position where you're able to avoid certain hits or that you're actually able to attack from a different angle. And you want to really make sure you're getting value out of that because it's very easy to use movement unnecessarily, and then you struggle to see why you're even doing what you're doing, and it can be a really tough thing to figure out and really to work on in terms of feeling like you're kind of getting button happy and mashing a lot, and you're not really thinking about what you're doing and why.
yeah, that's a good answer. Like this is a really fast game, so
Hmm.
it's very hard to like slow down and really analyze what you're doing because like it's almost like the way you're supposed to improve it and actually purposely thinking of it is to just think about it not just like what you did, but what were the consequences of what you did. And that can be really, it takes a long time. So I guess it'd be like, what should be some things you should notice while you're practicing purposeful movement? Should you be doing this against other people? Should you be prioritizing like some movement tech over others? Should you just be focusing on mixing up stuff or mixing up timings? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say, of course, for practice, doing it both in practice mode and in game is both. They're basically two sides of the same coin. You need to be doing them together. And even for me, and I know this kind of depends from player to player. For me personally, it was very hard for me to even practice movement in practice mode at all. It was tough for me to get any value out of it, and I couldn't really get anything from when I was practicing it on my own. I only saw results or improvements once I actually started practicing it in game. So I would definitely recommend playing like friendlies with people and focusing on how smooth your movement is, whether you feel like you're comfortable when moving around on platforms or it feels more forced. And getting to a point where you're much more comfortable takes time. But I think practicing in game is what gives you the most value because you're practicing it in real situations where there's an actual player in front of you that can hit you. You're not just doing movement where there's nothing around you. And so you can do whatever you want there. But when you're playing against an actual person, the movement that you can do and the way that you can use it is really limited. And the opponent can actually cover different spots. And so you really start to think about what you're actually doing with your movement once you start playing people and you start wave dashing around and getting hit instantly, and you realize that you actually want it to be that maybe, for example, you practice something like using wave dash backs in your neutral, where you run forward, just wave dash back. It's a simple way to bait someone out and to act as if you're running in, but that alone,
Classic.
right? I mean, that alone is very, it's very easy to do that and not really see a lot of value in practice mode. But then when you do it in actual games, you'll notice that there's a reason you're doing that and actually does something in terms of placing fear in your opponent and so on. And I mean that's really important as well. As far as what to practice, I think there's a lot of drills that people have posted in different places. In like at the Academy server has like information for like what you should practice in general. And I think those are great drills to practice on your own, like kind of focusing on especially like wave dashes and wavelands and when you're using those. I think platform movement is one of the tougher things to implement into your game when you first start out and when you're trying to slowly improve from like when you're like a lower to mid-level player. Platform movement can be very tough to actually use correctly because you have to kind of be able to see where there's a situation where you can use it either to gain positional advantage or to be able to maybe reach someone further away than what you were normally able to, or even going on a platform to use a grounded move on it and attack them. So I think that is something that's really valuable to focus on because wave dashing comes naturally over time as you play, but platform movement can feel much more unnatural when you're starting out.
I do agree that practicing your movement is obviously that's important, but I think just as important is understanding how to apply it.
Oh yeah.
Like, to give an example, you're playing ABSA and you're playing against the Zetterburn, and I don't know, you're on Fire Capital. Knowing when you want to try to fight Zetterburn for center stage or roughly center on one of the lower platforms, knowing when you want to contest him for that area versus giving up a little bit of space so that you can outrange him. I think understanding what your goal is in certain times of the match and utilizing your movement to execute that is just as important as the execution itself.
When we tell you to keep playing, we're not kidding.
Yeah, it is really a great piece of advice is just keep playing the game. And and it's also true, like play the game, but also have kind of a purpose while you're playing. Because if you just keep playing the game and kind of mashing your head against the wall over and over, you're eventually going to not really get much value out of it for obvious reasons. But in general, the more you play, the more you're just going to start doing stuff and you'll feel more comfortable with movement. And at this point right now, it's very hard for me to actually think about what I'm doing when it comes to movement because I've been playing the game just for so long. It gets to a point where it's very natural and you're not really thinking about it a ton.
I feel like it's just a lot of it's taken for granted how much you start to autopilot, but since you've gotten so much better at it, it's the good type of autopilot where you can just do it, and now you're thinking about next moves and stuff like that. So like in terms of like actually thinking about it, if you're thinking about it, it's gonna like slow down and you're just gonna get hit. But that's just kind of the learning process. Like you just kind of have to run into people a lot before you kind of understand what you were doing to get hit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, it's kind of weird how when I think about, for example, playing in tournament, it's tough for me to like think about times I was really thinking in my head. A lot of it is very subconscious, where it feels like you're kind of just autopiloting the whole time. And there is kind of a sense where you're trying to think, but you're not really. It's like you're trying to think, but not really, because there's a difference between like autopiloting and also just kind of naturally playing the game and letting your mind flow in different ways as you're playing. But if you play the game and you just purely autopilot where you're not even trying to think or even trying to like be intentional, you're obviously going to be playing a lot worse. And that happens with everyone where they just struggle with things like that. But it's a very fine line where you really don't have the time to be thinking about every single thing you do or every single move or action because it's such a fast-paced game, like we said. It's like really tough to try and do that.
The amount of times I've nared and then just kept naring because I'm pretty sure it'll work is not countable on any number of fingers. Because the muscle memory is really hard with that one.
Yeah, it's tough to break, and especially when it works a majority of the time, it's kind of tough to break it, or if you're not getting clearly punished for it. But it might even be that like you're getting punished for it a lot, but then there's something even better you could, or you're not getting punished, but there's something better you could do still. And so it's hard. It's not even just whether it's like bad or good. It's like better or, even better, good or better. So you
Yeah.
kind of have to keep like, there's a lot of efficiency and optimization that comes about with like working on, say, your gameplay and your punish or your neutral and so on.
So Frigo brought up something that got me. You mentioned throwing yourself at the opponent, and that kind of got me. Another thing that's just as important as your own movement is your opponent's movement, and recognizing the options they have available as far as quick. Like that's another whole box to unpack in itself.
Yeah,
that's another set of variables you have to consider at every point of the match.
Oh yeah, it is definitely something that you have to be aware of is what movement options someone else has, especially if you want to try and look for like what's, say, their platform movement options and then trying to cover or cut them off when they get there.
Cough, Reno, cough, cough.
I know the amount of times I'll just be like doing platform movement and then someone just runs up tilts me. It's like, really, man? I was doing my thing. What the hell?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's exactly the kind of thing that happens, I think, when you start like slowly getting into movement, is suddenly you have to recognize when you shouldn't move or like try to do something fancy and just like do the simplest thing. You start getting into a realm of like a lot of mix-ups popping up over and over. So it's quite interesting how that plays out, where you have to be, there's kind of like a dance where you're both trying to move and like move really well. But sometimes it's just, you can stand there and just watch your opponent, like basically just like freaking out with platform movement or something. And then all you do is wait there for a second and then hit them. And you won neutral by doing virtually very little, if not like nothing. So it is definitely something to consider, especially also with things like being aware of how your opponent could potentially come at you, especially with my movement options that are a bit more unique, say like Apps' up B, Edelis's dash attack, things like that, which are still attacks, but they serve as movement and things that really propel you and give you a lot of like momentum and so on. So it is definitely a really deep dynamic to like consider.
I guess that would bring us more into like the character sections for it, because there's a common theme in Rivals since like the main defensive option is your movement plus a parry of how do you get into your opponent's range to hit them. So it kind of becomes this game of do you overextend to catch them like wave dashing back or something like that? Do you throw out as big a hitbox as possible to cover X amount of area? So how would you describe like that thought process?
Yeah, you mean kind of the thought process of say like decision making when it comes to like dealing with
Yeah,
movement or even watching for
yeah.
it?
So like a lot of like grounded stuff where it's like Edalus is gonna like dash attack you. You're in the corner. You can't really jump over it because he's already in your threat range from like 3/4 across the stage, or something like that.
Right.
Or like Ori just doing like a short hop bear or jumping
Mhm.
because Ori.
Right.
So like it's a lot of just fast stuff. And unless you have like a direct answer for that, like needles or something to slow it down, it can feel kind of overwhelming.
When Ori
So I
jumps,
guess it's like how
when
yeah,
Ori
how do you
jumps,
make
I
that
start
more
to lose
manageable?
neutral.
Yeah, basically.
What did you say, Leo?
I said when Ori jumps, I start to lose neutral.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's honestly it is tough, and that the game is very fast paced because of that, where you can get really overwhelmed really quickly. And Rivals is a game that has very few defensive options compared to like games with shields, It's it's inherently it's just more aggressive, but I think it's just more about the way that you say, for example, dealing with certain moves, you have to place your hitbox as well. And that itself is kind of a part of dealing with, say, really fast characters. For example, with Edalus, with his dash attack, he can kind of just sprint at you really quickly and cover a lot of space. But most characters can kind of run away and not get gained on too quickly. And something you can do is kind of just run away and then short hop and like throw out an aerial to cover them as they're flying at you. That's something that I even do with Zetterburn, where I literally run away from the. Proto just said, "Shut up, dude!" in the questions. I hate Proto.
You really did.
You really did. But yeah, so dealing with those things, a lot of times it's about abusing your own hitboxes. That it's so important to know what hitboxes can you use to actually say beat out your opponents, or pretty much to just cover yourself and place a say a wall of safety around you, even for a second. Things like that are really important, where you don't want to just sit around and either watch them and wait for them, or constantly run at them and throw out hitboxes but you want to think about, if you throw out a hitbox to cover yourself or you use it defensively, you think to yourself, I know why I throw this out. I covered this option or this timing of him attacking me. Now let me think about what I want to do after that. And so you want to kind of know that when it comes to like movement and so on, even like your hitboxes, they can help you cover certain things. And simply put, sometimes like really good movement, for example, just going to a platform when you expect someone to rush at you from the ground, can be an easy way to just drop down and use an aerial and cover them. And so there's things like that where you have to be able to know like how to be safe with certain things like your hitboxes, and how to use movement to really avoid certain hits and be able to kind of play around what they're trying to do with their burst hitboxes. But it can be difficult, and it can get overwhelming very quick, especially with like the faster characters, where you think you're constantly being like bombarded around left and right and there's no way of actually escaping. It really is something I think you should work around, is kind of thinking about how your hitboxes interact with theirs and having a pretty decent understanding of that. It helps a lot in terms of knowing how to cover yourself, because a lot of times there's a lot of hitboxes you can just beat out and you don't have to actually, especially like things like Edalus dash attack that's so overwhelming, it's not really disjointed, and so you could beat it out with a lot of things and things like that. I think is stuff to really consider with, especially like if you don't feel like you can move around, or you don't feel you're being pressured a lot to actually be able to get out of the way of things.
Yeah, that Edalus thing. That was the first thing Leo basically taught me when I was first joining Chill. Is like, Eda dash attacks like negatively disjointed. Just fucking hit him.
Right. Like that, and it's such a simple thing, and it's true. It's hard to hit him when he's flying around, But it is true that you can place a lot of hitboxes that just he can't deal with on the spot, and Edelus has to be a lot smarter with how he's using his moves. He can't just kind of go, throw his brain out the window and that's it.
All right. So it seems like we have a few actual legit viewer questions if you want to start going through those now, other than Proto just making fun of Adi.
Of course. Yeah, we could do that near the end of the show if you wanted to continue just talking about some stuff with movement and then get to those at the very end.
Yeah, like I've got a few questions as well still.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to open it up because I feel like I've been talking a bit more. If Scurvy or Leo have any more questions for you, Adi, I'll open up to them.
I want to ask how you think, how you think movement translates between characters.
Yeah.
Because I have had, I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn and call myself a good player, but I have a lot of progress with Edelus. And it feels like everything I've done with him doesn't really translate well to other characters. And I wanted to know your thoughts on stuff like that.
Yeah, I think, and it's kind of interesting because I think movement does really transfer well to different characters in that it's a very basic tech skill that once you pick up a new character, you're not gonna like forget how to wave dash or forget how to do something very basic like dash dancing, right? So there's always gonna be kind of a foundational layer that's gonna exist that you're never gonna be starting at, say, step one when you're trying to like learn a new character after that. But it is true that you can have good movement with a certain character because you understand how that movement is useful for that character, and it could be very different with another character. For example, Edelus isn't a character that you see a lot of movement used because of how great dash attack is, right? So it might be that when you play Edelus a lot and you switch to another character, that maybe you require a lot more platform movement, you start to struggle because you're not used to using that and you're not sure how to use it. It's the same thing I think can apply where if you're Forsburn, Forsburns love using platforms and they have a great way of using it with Plat Drop Dare and Plat Drop Fair. And that's not something that you're going to be instinctually trying to do when you come from a different character like Edelus. You're going to try and stay more on the ground, and then you're kind of going to play a lot of times Edelus is like to stay more on the corner and then come at you when they have an opening and try to whiff punish a lot. And it's tough to actually deal with, like, try to do something like that on characters that don't have that option. So, and if you try to go full on platform movement with Edelus, it's not going to be able to work the best because his movement isn't incredible, and he has a lot of better options that he can abuse as well when it comes to dash attack and so on. So it also depends with characters like say Absa, where platform movements can be tough when you're trying to go say like to the top platform because their double jump is so slow. Using like a double jump waveland onto a top plat and then trying to attack, it's slower, and so there's certain options that you just can't do compared to on a character like Zetterburn. You could double jump and then immediately waveland onto a platform and hit them. So there's a lot of stuff that you need to be aware of your own character where you want to be able to take whatever basics you've taken from one character or another and then think about how it plays into their game, basically into their move set and what you need to actually keep in mind and kind of adjust it accordingly, where whether you need more platform movement, and even if you don't use it a lot, it's still valuable to be able to know how to do these things because you will still need them at some point. It may not just be as impactful as another character.
I wanted to take a moment and peek at some of the viewer questions we have here. Toily Chan asks, how good is Eda's movement compared to other characters? I would say that Edalus's movement is kind of adjacent to other characters in that he's kind of got like a two-part wave dash with dash attack. It's something that a lot of characters don't have, and it's kind of difficult, like I said earlier, to compare tools other characters to have to dash attack because of how versatile it is and how essential it is to Edelis's game plan. I would say in the realm of like movement, of course, the theme of the episode, in the realm of movement in and out of zones, Edelis excels. There is no other character that can move as fast side to side, and he whiff punishes like no other. But on the downside, if you manage to catch Edelis in the middle of this movement, and he, maybe panics or chooses the wrong option, and you catch him without his air dodge or his double jump, or you catch him like right below the stage with a long-lasting hitbox, he's a little screwed. So his limited vertical movement is kind of buffed by his really excellent horizontal movement, and it just kind of puts him in a different direction than other characters. Overall, I would say it is better when we're talking about playing the neutral game and moving around hitboxes and trying to condition the opponent. Yeah, Edelis's movement is really good among the cast. He has a lot of versatile options at any time, and it beats a lot. It beats a lot of big buttons. So, more questions. We've got a couple questions for Adi.
All right, we'll knock through what we got in the Twitch, and then I got a couple lined up here inside Discord.
All right.
Flip a coin, I guess. See whether we want to do Twitch or Discord questions first.
All right, I'll do it real quick. All right, hold on.
Yeah, I'm not
let's
sure
do-
I see a lot of Twitch questions right now. I think they're mostly in Discord.
All right, let's start in Discord then.
All right, we will start.
Yeah, here. One question is: top players will run in neutral a fair amount rather than wave dashing all the time. Insight? Any insight? Honestly, and this depends on the character. So some characters are actually faster when they wave dash across versus running. A clear example is Crag, who's actually a lot slower if you try to just run across the stage. If you watch, say, like MSB or any other top player, they should be wave dashing across the entire stage because they're just faster. They cover more space quickly, and so it's much more valuable. In terms of other characters, some of them it's not even that it actually is as important, but it might even be simply that it's a preference. Say, for example, in Zetterburn, I don't think there's a major difference between whether you wave dash or run. And some people it's kind of just a preference where the way they move. But there is some value still where if you wave dash, you can actually maintain the direction you're facing. So something, especially Blue does this a lot, and it's the thing that I've picked up on too, is he likes to use wave dash back over and over to keep his back face towards the opponent. And when you do that, you can actually jump up and then approach with a bear. You could do the same with a RAR bear, but it's kind of a preference where you might be able to space your wave dashes a bit better, or if you need to turn around and hit someone moving forward within like a shorter distance, a RAR may need too much time where you have to actually get a sprint going. So there's intricacies like that, and some players, I think like Cake, he just likes to turn around and then start wave dashing towards your opponent when hitting them with a bear instead of roaring. And it's honestly, part of it is just preference and what feels comfortable to do. But it really does depend. But some characters, it's important to think about, especially with characters like Crag and maybe Absa. They're definitely faster with wave dashing, so you want to actually use them just for a clear advantage.
Right. Just to add on to that, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I just want to confirm something on that question. But isn't it true that there are some moves that just moves in general, you can do them faster out of run rather than wave dash? So that's beneficial.
I'm not actually sure. It might be if you're talking about things like doing jabs or tilts straight out of run instead of wave dash forward jab or wave dash forward and tilts. I actually am not sure if it's faster one way or another? That could be something interesting to ask. Probably Menace.
I
Who is
think
the-
I feel like Menace would probably know, yeah.
I feel like
He
the
would.
difference is when you do a wave dash tilt, you have to account for the air dodge land frames, which if it's
The
same
jump
as
squat,
melee,
right?
Yeah, if it's the same as melee, it's 10 frames when you air dodge under the ground. But when you're running and you run and do into a tilt, you usually crouch beforehand, and the crouch animation is much faster than the air dodge landing animation. So when you can do tilts out of run when you crouch out of the run, and that is
Right.
faster than wave dashing.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
I
That's
forget the
something that
exact frame data. Isn't crouch like frame 1 in this game? So that would make it absurd if you could just run and crouch everywhere, which I know is really good for runners
So
because
the
down
thing
tilt
is,
is
so
absurd.
the thing about that is that you can't crouch in the dash animation. So there's
Yeah,
a
just in the
technique.
run animation.
Yeah, so there's a technique. It's pretty
backdoor
common.
dashing.
Cactor dashing. That's right.
Yeah, where you're just in the turnaround constantly.
Yeah. So when you dash just long enough to enter the run animation, and when you crouch, you can dash back out of your crouch, and that will allow you to move way faster in and out of people's spaces. And I don't see a lot of people use it because everyone's a fan of the wave dash, right? Just because it's so baby mode in this game, right? They practically hand the wave dash to you.
Yeah, it's
On terms-
it's.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say it's definitely an underused mechanic. It's tough to really use well because you kind of have to be in your run animation before you try to just do like a longer wave dash. I mean dash dance, but it's really valuable if you can get good at it. It's just it does take a little bit of time because you kind of have to roll your stick where you're running forward, roll it down, run the other way, and you have to be pretty like thinking about it and kind of it's hard to really get good at to make sure that you're using it properly. But it is a valuable skill, no doubt. And it's something that another thing that it's valuable to practice, to kind of get the tech down and then to also practice it in game to see what it's so you're able to see how it's like to be able to have such strong control of your movement that you're able to really punish people even like when you're outside of your dash dance range.
So we got another question from Toily. This one was for me, but Adi, you're more than welcome to chime in. Regarding this movement in the Claren Zetter matchup, I can offer insight on the Zetterburn side of it, and that I don't know. I feel me personally, it's the most important matchup that Zetterburn can have, where movement will make or break you. Because the name of the game for Zetter in that matchup is you have to worth punish Clarence. You have to bait. You have to punish it. There's no running in on Clarence. You're going to get snuffed out. You're going to get taken off the side, and you're going to get edge guarded if you're not with punishing.
Yeah, no, I think it's tough to really pick out. It can be kind of tough to pick out different matchups as well, but I do think the Claren matchup is valuable, especially like you said for things like whiff punishing, where you want to be looking for how you can kind of stay right outside the range of Claren and then quickly go in with a burst option to then punish them and take advantage of their slower hitboxes.
Right. You want to constantly be like bobbing and weaving.
Right,
out of
exactly.
her
Yeah.
an area.
Yeah.
her
Give me
threat
just
range.
1 second, actually. I'm going to be right back.
Sure.
All right, I guess we can move up for Discord questions while we're waiting. So
Yeah,
this is a good one. I think the three of us can answer. What's the funniest movement option? Let's go down the list. Scurvy?
Ooh, funniest as like maybe not most useful.
I guess like the dumbest in a way.
On it. Rano's tongue boost.
Yeah,
All right, I'm back.
yeah, I can agree to that.
fact that Ronald, his airspeed is like next to non-existent, and then he can just flip his tongue out, and he's moving in the air horizontally twice as fast as Aura can. I think that's just shenanigans.
That's a lot of like setup too, since Rano's tongue boost is basically determined just on the spacing of the tongue, how much tongue is actually out before it connects to something. I would say the funny is, yeah.
Third.
And following up with the funny Rano stuff, I would add in on needle boosting.
Oh yeah, it's such a weird mechanic. It's so
fun, though.
not like it's so useful. I've seen some amazing uses of it, but it's so weird that it's even like an actual thing.
Yeah. Needle boosting is just kind of, I feel, as speaking as like this middle level Rano, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I'm going to go out for every single needle boost to edge guard, but it's also like really easy to react to because you can then wait for the Rano to jump or just air dodge straight through them, and now you get to edge guard a Rano for free, basically.
Oh, Tuba says explain needle boosting. I mean, Frigo, do you have any ideas to explain it in terms of the tech?
So Rano has a property where if you're charging needles, if basically the input is if you're moving off a ledge of any kind and you input needles within 3 frames of leaving the ledge, you conserve the momentum of whatever movement option you were doing. Say that be like a wave dash, a dash, walking, or just whatever. So the most practical is it can extend your combo game. So if you start from like a side platform, so if like you're on Tower of Heaven or Merchant Port and you do it from the side platform inward, you can extend combos that way. Or you can just do it right off the ledge and go for like a really deep edge guard. You just go really, really fast.
Yeah.
But that's the most practical explanation of it.
Yeah. That's actually, even I didn't know that. I didn't
know that. All you do is you just run and you push the within 3 frames.
Right. I didn't know that was like specifically how the tech works in terms of conserving momentum when you're leaving the stage.
Yeah.
All right, Leo. What is, in your opinion, the funniest movement option out there?
I am a fan of, well, I am a little biased. I'm a fan of Edalus Dash Deck, and I will tell you why. And it's because you can turn around out of it. And it makes it just like the weirdest combination of like a run and like an attack and a move and like also like a dodge of sorts. It's just like the like they hit random on the move property lottery. And Edalus got fast negative disjoint, but also it combos into up smash. So I would say that Edalus Dash Deck, or just like B reversing in general, like how Forceburg can smoke reverse, he can like inhale reverse and like down air and stuff. That's really cool to me. Edalus can do the same thing when he's icicle turn cooldown and after up B. So I think that is my favorite.
Yeah, see, I haven't really tinkered with Forsburn very much. So this was new to me, the amount of options that he has simply by being in smoke. That's really interesting. Frigo, did you have anything to add, or was needle boosting kind of your funny movement option?
I think needle boosting was probably my funny movement option, because outside of just looking cool and sometimes extending combos, it often becomes like this mid-level trap, which makes it really memeable. So yeah, needle boosting is my answer.
All right. Adi, did you have anything that you wanted to add for the viewer question? Funniest movement option?
I think tongue is honestly a pretty good answer. It just is such a ridiculous thing, and you can gain some really ridiculous amounts of momentum. I think when Rano had come out, Risky, kind of an OG player who's still around, I think not even plays here and there, he was really, really he was playing Rano at the start, and he would kind of experiment with recoveries where you could use not needle boosting, you could use tongue onto the ledge, and there's this one clip he had from a while ago where he basically tongued the edge from one side and while he was recovering, flew and then double jumped out of it, flew all the way across to the other side of the stage, and because he'd already used his wall jump, he just died. And it was the most ridiculous thing, and the fact that that's possible, I think, is crazy when it comes to like it's just really funny to see that with Rano's tongue. So yeah.
We got another really good one. I'm really interested to discuss in the Discord questions. This one, let me scroll down and find it. How do you deal with opponents that can move faster than you?
Yeah, it's kind of that's kind of a general idea I was talking about earlier with things with like knowing your hitboxes. So if you were to use an easy kind of concrete example, you got you have people like players like characters like Crag dealing with say Maple, right? It's a pretty tough matchup to be able to deal with it and that's one of the reasons it's a tough matchup is because Crag is so much slower and Maple can really bob and weave. And so something that you have to do really well is, like I said, like taking advantage of the hitboxes you have. For example, using your fair or even like your nair that's very like has a good disjoint, and then being able to place them in certain situations where you're able to box your opponent in. And then also Crag, for, like as an example, like Crag has a lot of great specials that he can kind of use for mix-ups and so on. But it really does come down to knowing how your hitboxes can cover certain amounts of space and being able to beat out like the hitboxes your opponent has. And a lot of it, and then there's a ton of the ability to kind of whiff punish because faster characters can they'll want to come in and get aggressive on you a lot of the time, and so you'd want to actually punish them accordingly and make sure that you're not letting them kind of run all over you and fly at you, but you're actually maybe wave dashing back a bit just to make sure that you're not getting hit by the moves that they're placing at you. So there's things like that where there's a lot of good movement you want to know, and being able to there's a sense in which you need to be able to like think about moves they'll like to use and be able to preemptively expect or cover certain areas where you expect that they'll rush in on you. But it can be tough, and that can be one of the things that's tough about winning neutral, especially in faster characters for things like Crag. It can be tough to deal with.
Yeah, I'm learning that myself with the Zetterburn and Ori matchup. Just learning that
Ori is definitely
knock out Fireball with F-Tilt.
Absolutely.
And kind of, because with Zetterburn, for the most part, doesn't really, and I guess Ori and Maple and Raster are the three big ones. But for the most part, I still leave the majority of the cast as Zetterburn as a fairly decent time being the aggressor. But because those three outpace him, he starts off the match on the back foot. And just my personal play style, I have a hard time with that. So it is really important that you understand when beginning a match, when you're not the aggressor, you're the slower character, you have to play more reactive.
Yeah, definitely. That's a huge part of it for sure.
Yeah, I feel like there's this overarching thing where it's like, oh, you actually can react to more than you think you can in this game. But then you fight something like an Ori, I think is probably going to be our go-to example for this type of thing. Where it's like, well, can you really react there? Because it's going to be really hard, especially with a character bouncing all over the place like Ori. So that's definitely that skillful character to deal with in terms of getting your movement down.
Yeah, definitely. And a question that I think Tubo asked earlier that I think is a good one is how does movement relate to stage control? And I think that's a huge thing, especially with good movement. Essentially, there's a sense in which when you have good movement, you place yourself in opportune positions where you're able to control more of the stage. A clear example would be using platform movement well, especially if you're on a top platform, top Tower of Heaven. there is a sense in which you're able to cover a lot of space when you're dropping down while also flying at your opponent, and you're able to cover kind of you're able to box the opponent in with good stage control, and it actually allows you to then have different vantage points you can approach the opponent, like I brought up even earlier on too. It gives you more options in how you can basically approach and attack your opponent, while also giving you potentially better ways of escaping. If you get hit, you can DI away, and you have more time. You have more space to then fall down and then deal with it and kind of recover from it. And there's this sense in which you have almost like this circular relation between the two, where good movement allows you to have good stage control because you're able to actually attack or deal with more of the stage that you're looking at, and you're able to actually cover them and make sure that your opponent can't feel safe there. And the more stage control you have, the more freedom you have with what you can do with movement. If I'm boxed into a corner and I have maybe one platform, I am very limited on how much movement I can actually use. I have one platform to maybe use and a very small amount of space I can dash dance in. But if you have a lot of stage control, that means you have a lot more space that you're safe to move in and feel comfortable in. And if you have that, you're able to actually deal with your opponent. And the comfort of having more movement means you have greater mix-ups, you have greater points of vantage to actually attack and approach your opponent. There's these really great ways that they kind of feed into each other really well. And so when you work on good movement, it's important to think about how much control you have over the stage that's enabling you to move even greater. And if you feel like you're boxed and you can't move, then it's obvious that you need to actually develop and gain more stage control at that point, and that the opponent's doing a good job of placing you and boxing you into a certain position.
Yeah, to bring up an earlier thing you said about like wave dashing back, it's like as strong an option as wave dash back is, you can't really utilize it when you don't have stage to wave dash back.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, that's a very good. It's a very like simple thing. If you have nowhere to go, you can't do anything. You're limited. You're very limited in what movement you have.
Yeah, so it's like this is a game where it's like if you're moving and you aren't doing it because that's the purposeful movement thing again. If you're wave dashing back without having a reason to, it's very easy to overextend into the wave dash back, and now you've taken stage control for free.
Right.
That happens a lot with players at like my level that I'm still trying to work on. That you just see all the time. You'll see someone wave dash back, and now the Ori example again, you get short hop fared, or you just get dash tagged, or
Right.
they jump right above you, and you're just getting hit over and over into the corner again.
Yeah, they don't understand that when you wave dash back, there's a purpose towards it. Where there is a sense in which you're giving up stage position momentarily, or stage control, and you're doing that in order to actually, say, read your opponent or punish them. So it is an interesting dynamic. There's the trade-off where you give up stage for a bit in order to actually punish your opponent when you expect them to overextend. And it's a simple interaction, but it goes deep into you're taking a risk where if you decide to wave dash back and then you don't really move in again to try and threaten certain areas, your opponent can literally just run forward, and now they have like more space to just say wave dash in or dash dance in. So you do need to be careful. You can't just kind of do these movements without thinking about what it's accomplishing. Like we said, and when we talked about, that's really valuable, is knowing why.
I guess in talking about this knowing why and talking about like stage control, I guess we can start moving into discussing movement for pressure, how to like actually like what effective pressure actually looks like through movement.
Yeah.
So I wondered if you would have some like insight on that, because we see a lot of like empty movement and stuff like that. So I wanted to like clear that up a bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's and I think I kind of brought that up too in talking about purposeful movement. I think that's one of the biggest problems that a lot of like lower level players can have when they start maybe discovering movement or they're trying to develop it, is a lot of very useless movement, right? A lot of button mashing, you're just kind of flailing and you're not doing anything valuable with your time in that. And it's very easy for your opponent to kind of just throw a hitbox in a general direction, and then they hit you, and your movement is not like useless. So, in terms of how to apply proper pressure, it's the same thing of you want your movement to reflect, basically to put fear into your opponent that they don't know where you're going to be, and so they don't know what to do with you. And so it's a pretty simple thing of when you say move to a platform, you're now threatening different options with it. And you want your opponent to feel scared that they don't know what you're going to do in that situation, or that there's only certain things they can do to beat it. And now they have to deal with that and kind of position themselves or move around accordingly to then affect it. But if they don't know what you're going to do or how you're going to move, you have a much greater chance of being able to mix them up and also just make them scared where they're afraid to maybe run in because they don't know whether you're going to stay on that platform or you're going to fall down. And so good movement can do a great amount of pressure to your opponent just in terms of making them unsure of where you're going to be. And it also is just very valuable when you're also just avoiding your opponent's attacks really well because your movement is used in a manner where you're doing it to essentially avoid hits. So an example could be you hit the opponent horizontally with, let's say a sour spot Zetter Fair. You send them forward a little bit towards the stage and you're on Blazing Hideout. There's a long platform up top. Instead of running straight at them in order to hit them again and potentially getting punished, you can use a tiny bit of platform movement, move across, and then fall down, and you can then fall down on top of them, and now you're able to deal with a lot of their options in terms of reactionary trying to maybe reverse the combo. So there's a lot of value to being able to actually use movement where you have a clear option you're covering. You're telling yourself, I'm not going to get hit by any grounded option, so I'm going to move above them and quickly drop down again. It's very simple, but it gives you a lot of value, and it can also punish you for it if they, for example, get hit and then jump up and try to punish your movement. That's possible, but it's definitely a game of, it's always risks and rewards, and you want to also have an idea of like what you're doing is like for a reason, why you're actually trying to avoid certain hits and so on.
All right. Yeah, that was. So, do we want to talk about last week's rest in RCS and start?
I think we do.
Yeah, we can move into last week. Tournaments and how they played out, and then we can move into wrap up.
All right. So I just want to start out by saying it's been a while, so I think no spoilers. Congratulations to Trace to.
I just need to pull up like the bracket then.
Oh, did you guys
so I can
do the
actually
bracket
like have a visual aid?
Yeah,
sure.
I can slap that in the chat real quick. Here you guys go. All right, it's in Twitch chat now. And once you guys get that loaded up, I can start talking about some of the cool stuff we're seeing.
All right, so Leo, what was something you wanted to bring up with last week's RAS?
Well, I just wanted to begin with a fat congratulations to Trace. I know he has been in the RAS circuit for a while now.
Is Leo here, or is he able to?
No clue.
We're just talking about it.
I don't know if he can talk or he's busy.
You're muted, Leo.
Am I? Oh man.
There we go.
There he is.
All right. Anyway.
I should talk. It's a bugger.
All right. So I want to start off by saying congrats to Trace. He's been at it for a while. He was there when I was in RRC. He was there when I graduated RAS, and now he's got it for himself. So congrats to him. Unfortunately, Harambe gets second for a third time in a row now. So he's he's getting a little pissed off about that, I bet. So
I think that was the first tweet I saw, was Harambe being pissed off about getting second.
So some surprising things, at least for me. There are some people on the Twitter who have picked up Rivals very recently, and I'm really impressed with how they're doing. I want to shout out Catalyst for making top 8 winner side.
Yeah, so he's relatively new to the scene. He's making waves
That's right.
relatively quick, just like
Former Ultimate player, like he got good.
That's right. He plays Claren, I believe. He's doing really well. One of my crew members now, who has been doing some really good shit, Virtual Pie, has been popping off recently. Enderborn, I believe, also entered the tournament. Hold on, I want to see how he did. Yeah, Enderborn was just below Catalyst here, so really good work. Shout out to those guys. We're seeing deep runs from Brunch, did a pretty good run. Steak coming all the way from a really deep round 1 losers, it looks like. So overall, pretty good RAS. I think it was well deserved to Trace. I think Harambe is a good player. I'm not familiar with Cirque, who was in winners finals, but he had a great run beating Harambe. He beat Brunch. He beat Chuck Fug. So that's really interesting. And that's last week's RAS. This week's RAS is, as always, I believe it is this Thursday at 8, right? They have it on Thursdays. So that is going to be happening this Thursday. Hopefully we will see some of our listeners in the bracket. I'm looking forward to seeing some of you guys in the runnings for RAS next week. And we can talk about RRC if you want. I don't know how much we want to spend on the review.
Yeah, we can move into RRC. That's fine.
All right. I'm gonna go grab the bracket for that then.
Sure thing.
While you're getting that, I actually just saw a tweet that I think is extremely relevant to this. I think this might be an alt player. Or someone else. He basically tweeted, "Alt players and rivals be like they use no movement in or tech in neutral, and then vigorously dash dance and wave dash in between stocks." And this is exactly what I was talking about how people learn the tech, they know how to do a wave dash, they know how to dash dance and so on, but they don't know how to use it in game because they've only started learning the tech normally, and they haven't ventured into actually experimenting with it in game. So that's the sort of thing that even I did when I started out, It's basically what you do when you start the game is wave dashing between stocks because you can do it and it looks cool when you start out. But that's kind of the same idea of movement that you learn initially, and it takes you time before you're actually able to use it well in game. But yeah, I thought it was pretty funny that the tweet exactly was talking about the stuff that I talked about earlier.
All right.
Yeah.
I know.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. I just want to take a little peek into the RRC bracket for last week. Again,
Sure.
One of my boys from Chill Gang, Virtual Pie, getting into top 8. We've got John Jake winning the whole event. I haven't been keeping track of RRC, but it's a really good win for him. He played 3 sets with Flavortown, and they all were pretty close. We got D-Gen's Daniel DeSavage falling to 3rd place to Flavortown. So we have a overall pretty stacked main bracket for RRC. I think seeing the evolution of these brackets has been very interesting since I've participated in them. So it's good to see new faces. And I'm glad to see John Jake at the top there. We got a lot of DGen members in this main bracket here. So here's hoping we see another deep run for one of these guys next week. The event is happening, I believe, tomorrow. That's in the Rivals of Recess server. We can link to that, I believe. So I will do that in a second. But this is for amateurs, which is what this radio is theoretically tuned towards. So any of our listeners who are looking to get into not their first tournament, but their first real experience should really look into RRC. So I will post the link for the Discord in chat real quick. If I can find
All right, well, I think we've covered just about everything we want to talk about today. So I'm going to start moving us to wrap up. Adi, I wanted to thank you for coming on. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, giving us your insight, letting us pick your brain. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it was pretty fun. I think it's pretty cool that you guys are trying to get players kind of just to talk about different things. Especially, I think it's interesting how you're trying to really like market this towards the lower level players and really help them have something that they can look to just like kind of listen to people talk about the game. So yeah, it was fun. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you for coming on, Adi.
Thanks to you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here, to be said that I'm a good player, as much as I'm not. It is very appreciated.
All
And
right.
one last quick message I have for the viewers. Right now, the current schedule, we're looking to get an episode out every 2 weeks, anywhere from the ballpark of 30 minutes to an hour, maybe a little bit longer than that if the conversation takes us there. Just depending on the host schedule, co-host, guest speaker schedule, and what we can get out to y'all. So that's kind of the goal we're looking for, is every 2 weeks. Frigo, Leo, do you guys have any last messages before we wrap up?
Not bad for a first stream. We'll be working harder to fix graphics, to fix audio, to make everything a better experience overall, and basically be bugging more Discords to try and get more people in, and get as many more guest stars as possible, and pick more of their brains, and have just a really good library of this. That's our goal for now.
Yeah, and I just want to say to all of our viewers who are listening, get out there, join a tournament, play the game. You aren't going to get better by sitting in training mode, and as cool as your tech skill might be, you really got to learn the basics, and the basics are getting your ass kicked and getting back up. So, dip your toe in.
That is true.
Yeah,
That is true.
You can either dip your toe into the water or you can do a cannonball, and it's a different for everyone, but you got to start that snowball.
Indeed. All right, everyone. This has been ScurvyGerm, Leo Luster, Frigomaniac, and Adi. This has been episode 1 of WROA. Hope you all have a good night.
We will see you on YouTube later.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.